My name is Kiana Hayeri, and I'm an Iranian-Canadian photojournalist. At the end of the day, I'm a visual storyteller, right? And storytelling, there's an art to it. And I very much, what I tell people is visual storytelling with photographs is very much like a good film or a good novel. And it has to have the same elements, right? A good novel will have has like an introduction where like set you up where you are. It has characters. It needs to have a protagonist. It needs to have conflict. It needs to have sometimes solutions, sometimes not, and then needs a climax and then an ending. And I think the same thing applies to visual storytelling. When you're building a series, a photo essay, you want to make sure you hit every note and you have all these elements included in it. So doing research and prep work for every assignment is very different. But I think a few things is common for every one of them, and it really depends how comfortable and familiar you are with the environment you're going to be working with. If I know the place, well, that's great. If I don't, which has happened before, I reach out to people who have worked in that environment or my colleagues who are already there to kind of understand, the cultural sensitivities or even like basic logistics is like, can I drink tap water or not? All those things are things that you think about as you prepare for your trip. How the climate is going to be, what are the tools that I need, how's the electricity, do I need, how many batteries do I need? So these are like the logistics of it. I may read about it, but I try to avoid visuals from that place to be able to like have my own take on it, not be influenced by other people's work. For larger stories, some of the assignments are very short, they're a few days, but stories that require more work and more time, what I do is first of all, I love mind maps. They're just like the perfect way for me to clear my head and connect things because my brain goes like so I create mind maps for big stories, and I also create these shot lists where I just have these like different columns. One is like, okay, I need establishing shots, so I need wide, medium, detail. What are the things in this story that I could look for? And what are the detail shots that can help me tell the story? And then I also have these like list of, for example, emotions, where I think about, okay, this story is supposed to communicate anger or frustration. Then I start imagining what that would look like. For example, when I was working on the story about mental health in Afghanistan with women, I thought about it specifically. I was like, okay, how does depression, because depression is something, it's not very obvious, right? How does a frame can communicate that depression? It comes with isolation, it comes with anxiety. So what are the situations? And by preparing those lists, once I'm in the field, I see a situation unfolding and in my head goes, ping, this is that. Then I get to like photograph it. It kind of like helps me. It doesn't mean I have to photograph all of them, but it prepares me to be ready in case if I see that to photograph it. So gaining trust is like the most important skill that one would need in the line of work that I work in. And there are many different ways, really depends on what culture I'm operating in, but there are ways that I try to gain trust. But one that is very common, that I do it everywhere I go, is by spending time. Really like spending time, making them feel heard and important. So I ask a lot of questions. I make a lot of eye contact. I make sure I look them in the eyes when they're talking. And a lot of it is about body language, right? Like I don't walk around like this in a room. Like I just make myself small or approachable. I'm not very swift in my movement unless I'm covering something newsy and fast-paced and I have to run. But if I'm in somebody's space, I try to, move very slow and not to make anyone uncomfortable. So these are like things that I do commonly. And then there are like some cultural clues that I tap people on their shoulder quite a lot or on their knee, because I feel like it just, unless I realize they're very uncomfortable with that, that's different. But I think it just brings a level of closeness and intimacy with that simple gesture of like, hey, I see you, I hear you, thank you. We as media operators, we go into places and we take their stories, we take their time, and I think it's very important to give people that we photograph or we tell their stories agency about how their stories want to be told. Not everyone will have the knowledge to do it right, but I think it's a fine dance that one has to do to know. I would have a discussion if I'm doing a portraiture. Sometimes I show them their portraits and say, how do you like this? Or how do you think, do you like this body language? Or when I was working with Afghan women using neon lights, I would ask them, what color do you think should be used here? And sometimes they don't know. Maybe they make wrong decisions, but then I will take the time and have a reasoning and have a chat with them. It's like, no, but I think green is better because of this, but this will involve them in the photo. And I think it's very, very important. My baseline is, do I want to be treated like that or not? Do I want my family to be photographed like that or not? I don't want somebody walked into my household and photographed my parents and just like abruptly leave and tell the story in a way that is like far from their reality. So I really try to, I always like use myself and my family as a baseline, and then I try to apply that wherever I go, no matter what culture. I always try to like have an engagement and talk about the story. Places that I operate in comes with risks, and for myself, for my colleagues, for people that I photograph. And one, you try to be as aware as possible about the risks. You do risk assessment. I'm not saying risks should not be taken, but I think you have to calculate the risk that you take, whether it's worth it or not. If it's not worth it, just let it be. Minimize it as much as you can. But also, in teams that I work with, we always have this rule that if anybody is uncomfortable, could be the driver, it could be the local producer, I make sure to create the safe space for them to talk about it, to have a conversation. And if somebody is not feeling safe, we call it off. We don't proceed. Because I'm also very well aware that people that I work with are dependent on that income. So sometimes they might be taking risks, unnecessary risks, for the sake of keeping that income, right? So you have to be very careful not to put them in positions where they don't feel comfortable saying that, oh, we don't think this is safe to do. And then when it comes to subjects, for me, they have the highest priority to make sure that what we do, whether on the ground, in the field, or later on after the story is published, doesn't jeopardize their safety or cause them in trouble. And sometimes in environments like Afghanistan, you have to think it's not about the immediate danger. Sometimes it's like years later. Once the photo is out, it's out in internet forever. So you have to calculate that as well. And sometimes in certain cultures, in Afghanistan, for example, people don't think that far ahead. So it's my responsibility and my team's responsibility to think about it ahead of the time and have that chat with them, and sometimes make decisions on their behalf to make sure they remain safe.